Hello, everyone, on Women Dialogues. I'm your host, Shashi, with all of you again to create more women voice by women for women. And today, with us, a very special and very famous professor. She is joining us from Florida. Her name is Dr. Maya, and she is a Fulbright specialist, uh, Advanced Management Division of Chair, University of Arizona. And she's a she has published so many books, so many publications. We will get to know more from her about her work and about her achievement. And let's start. So welcome, Professor Maya, on the Women Dialogue.
Thank you so much. Just a very, very quick correction. I'm with the University of Arizona Global Campus with the Forbes School of Business and Technology. Yes, just so there is no confusion.
No, that's wonderful. And I think it is bringing more diversity when you are talking about, because when you're talking about global, and we have this work also, I'm doing this work as a global women empowerment project. And it makes me like having more stories here from you further. And I'm looking forward to hear from you. You must be having a lot of global experience. So let's start, Professor Maya, knowing about, before we talking about your the present and current work, we should just, I would like to, our audience to listen or to hear from your early life. How was it? What was your early life? How was it? Your experiences and all about.
Sure. Well, I'm originally from the southeast of Europe. The current country is Bosnia and Herzegovina. We were actually part of the larger union. We were part of former Yugoslavia. So I was born and raised in former Yugoslavia. I was born and raised in Sarajevo. Sarajevo was the Olympic city in 1984. We had Winter Olympics there. I think that my childhood was absolutely terrific. And sometimes I wonder if it was as beautiful as I remember it, or whether what came afterwards was as bad as I remember it. So maybe in comparison. So I was raised by both parents and grandparents. I was the only child. I always wanted to have a sibling, but that didn't happen. And the most important presence in my life, in my early childhood, was my grandfather. My grandfather was highly educated, highly accomplished, and we would start every single morning by first eating breakfast, and then we would play a party of chess, because he was a passionate chess player. After playing a party of chess, he would ask me about different topics. One day we would study geography, one day history, one day philosophy, and then the fourth day would be politics, and then the fifth day would be literature. And we would start with the segment of him teaching me certain segments from those content areas. And then afterwards, he would ask me for my opinion, and he would ask me questions. For example, in the world of politics, he would always say, well, how would you solve this conflict? How would you resolve this issue? And I was very young, and I thought that is very normal. And I thought that every single little girl in the world is doing exactly what I'm doing, because I had no comparison. So later on, when I was interacting with friends at school, and I realized that was not necessarily a typical upbringing. So he was a crucial presence in my childhood, of course, with my parents and my grandmother as well. And I think thanks to him, I became what I consider myself a global citizen, traveling across the world, doing lectures and research. And a lot of times I hear his voice saying, well, how would you solve this? How would you go about doing this? And another thing that he was doing, without me realizing that he was doing this, former Yugoslavia was still a patriarchal society. But he kept telling me, you can do whatever you want to do. You can be whatever you want to be. And being as little as I wasn't certain why he keeps repeating that. What he was doing, he was empowering me and giving me confidence without me necessarily realizing that. So a lot of his things that he said, maybe at the time, I was just going with the flow, but later on reflecting on it, I think he is absolutely the most important person in my upbringing.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you're talking about, it's a really beautiful example, the way you mentioned, like the way indirectly or the persistently, repeating the same thing again and again to you. whether you are knowing or knowingly or unknowingly, but he was inciting, creating the insight or creating that awareness in your mind that as a woman, you are also having equal things. That's a very strong point. And when you're talking about this all stories and all, what a part of that, what other way you feel while having such, a bright and very supportive childhood or family environment, what other way your environment contributed the way you are today?
We had a very close-knit community. The doors were always open. You always interacted with neighbors. I remember one neighbor would actually do lunch for all the kids in the, like every single day. It was almost like the women were alternate, so we can play outside. We didn't spend as much time on, we didn't have technology that kids have nowadays. We had TVs and radios, but for the most part, I mean, if the school is out, I was outside. I was playing in the forest. I was running around. We had a really heavy winter, so we did a lot of winter activities. Well, hence Sarajevo was the Winter Olympics capital, and we had a lot of supportive. It was a broader community. The teachers as well. I went to what I considered the best school in Bosnia when it comes to the high school level. We had 2 Nobel Prize winners coming from my high school. And it is the oldest high school in the country. And it was hard to get into, but once you get into it, the level of education, the educators, they kept pushing us, they kept inspiring us. At the time, we thought they were destroying us and they were messing up with our social activities. But later on, I realized and reflected on it. I've learned so much at a high school level that I carried with me throughout my life. So I would say that ultimately my childhood, my young adulthood experience was that of love, support, community, and education. So those are the kind of the themes that I can recognize during those early years.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And the way you explained about how they shape the way you are today, or have they contributed in your journey, it is beautiful to know. And not only reconcile it, I say reconcile is not right word, I will say encourage or reboost ourselves while seeing our past, how they shaped and how they contributed in our the present. But when we are talking about your work, the present work, you are Fulbright specialist and you work globally. So what is all about?
Well, I left my country. I was not even 18 years old. We had the bloodiest war in Europe since World War II. I think there's been a lot of things in the news, so I'm not going to dwell on it. But there was this period of darkness, this lengthy period of darkness for everyone within that region, not just of course I was impacted as well. I ultimately ended up going through a few places until I ended up in a refugee camp, and I spent approximately a little over 3 years in a refugee camp. That experience shaped me tremendously. I encountered a lot of issues pertaining to the human rights. I was painfully aware that while United Nations was supporting different countries with hosting those refugees, refugees were not always treated the way human beings should be treated. So it was a struggle. It was a difficult path. And I finally emerged out of that, what I consider darkness period, when I immigrated to the United States. I was actually very thankful to immigrate here. And I also came here as a refugee. Being refugee in the United States was quite a bit different, vastly different. So that's when I felt that I started living again. So it's almost like I had this period of time of 4 or 5 years where I felt I wasn't necessarily living. Throughout my experience, I've developed a strong passion for international matters, for education of both boys and girls, not just girls, but focusing particularly on female empowerment and education. And I started going through the corporate setting first. I was in a financial industry, developed a love for training and through training, teaching. And then afterwards, I started going into academia full time. I actually thought I was just going to be teaching, but that's not where it ended. I started traveling, working for different technology companies, worked on e-learning implementation initiatives in the developing world. And then I discovered my passion for research and global lectures, global research in the developing world. That passion took me across the globe. You and I chatted about, I was in India in 2018.
Yeah.
I did research in the Middle East. I did research in the Southern African region. Panama, Cuba, Mexico, Haiti, just to mention some of the countries, the Balkan region.
Wow.
With that said, Fulbright took me to work on 2 different projects. So 2 projects were sponsored by Fulbright, and I'm very thankful. And those projects took place in Zambia. One I collaborated with my executive dean, with the Forbes School of Business, and the other one I was doing on my own. And those were quite rewarding experiences. I do hope once the world reopens that I'll get an opportunity to work on yet another Fulbright project. I'm actually in touch with a university in Jordan, and I would hope to do a project there.
Yeah, that would be wonderful. And I believe the way you have experienced and the work globally, and I believe you have covered almost all the continent and part in some sort of way.
I need to go to Australia, and actually I was at the leadership retreat in Bali, and I met so many terrific women, because it was a women leadership retreat in Bali, and we chatted. That was my last trip before the world closed. So now I have some terrific Australian friends. So my goal is to not necessarily lecture or educate in Australia. I want to go and visit with them. And I don't know, a lot of times when you go to a place, you get another opportunity or you get some different possibilities. I would like to explore Australia a little bit. That would be my goal.
That would be wonderful. And I think the way you explained and you worked earlier in different parts of the world, you will bring that knowledge, that wisdom, that, all your experience, and you might be as a traveler or tourist, or maybe as a training or as a researcher, but you are carrying those all experiences on your back along with you. So definitely any place in the world, they would be so glad and happy to have you on their place. That would be great. Yeah. So as we are talking about these experiences coming into academia, what usually how it works? Just tell, because many of us, those are not aware of maybe, or those want to come into more into how it all works. Bit of, if you can share.
Well, I pursued a non-traditional path. The best path is you live with your parents, then you go to college, and then you maybe you go towards your PhD while being a full-time student, and then you are a traditional professor. I am not a traditional professor, and I don't actually have any goals or any desires to be a traditional professor. I like to be very diverse in what I do. So my non-traditional path, once we immigrated to the United States, shortly thereafter, I started having kids, and I had to work full-time. So being a full-time student at a traditional campus was a non-option for me. So I would like to inspire your audience to pursue the path that is available to them. So what I've done is I worked for the Merrill Lynch Credit Corporation. I worked for the private label companies in the financial industry. I felt that I was very successful in the financial industry, and I've learned the world of business quite a bit. Not underestimating traditionalists, but I do feel that a person that is teaching business should have a very significant business experience. Because when you're talking to those students, when you're bringing them business examples, those examples cannot be a classroom examples. They have to be from an actual business world. So spending those years within the financial industry gave me that experience that I can share with my students. With Merrill Lynch Credit Corporation, I had a good friend who was working with a training division. And my good friend and I will actually let her know to watch this video. She'll love the fact that I mentioned her. Her name is Kat.
Oh, yeah.
So one day Kat asked me if I would like to train her class, do some introductory training or something just to help her out. And that was a pivotal moment for me. Standing in front of that audience and training them how to do our line of business, something simply happened. I said to myself, and I told Kat, wow, I love this. I really love this. And I was already pursuing higher education, working full time and doing it at night. But then I said to myself, I feel like I discovered my calling. I discovered what I'm supposed to do. So in 2013, from 2010 to 2013, I was doing a full-time job in the financial industry. I did a lot of part-time teaching jobs. 2013, I finally was brave enough to say, I am done with the financial industry and I'm going to go into academia full-time. But then yet again, I was doing a lot of part-time things with the technology companies and I started doing research. My friends tease me that I'll never be able to do just one thing. And I said, well, life is supposed to be lived, you know, exploring different possibilities. So to go back to your question, you have a traditional path. And you know what? Nothing wrong with it. As a matter of fact, if you're blessed enough to pursue it, it's an easier path. But then there's a path less traveled, a non-traditional, working on homework at 3 a.m. in the morning, waking up to feed a baby at 5 a.m. in the morning, and then your friends asking you, you look like you're about to pass out. I said, I think I may, because I only had 2 hours of sleep. And then, you know, just kind of things came together, and I've discovered my passion doing research, doing lectures, and doing a lot of things in the developing world, seeing how education can change lives, and realizing that what we're doing is, especially for women, especially for students who happen to be girls, inspiring them to do better, also seeing role modeling, them seeing someone that is a lecturer who happens to be a female that also has a story to share. I love doing it. I love doing research as well. I love traveling, and I'm not as happy as I was because of, you know, it's very hard to travel now.
Yeah, because of this kind of COVID and this pandemic and all. It's quite, you know, evident, and we know how the situation is. But as you worked with Global Campus, how the work is going now, how it seems like, and what kind of changes came in your work as well?
Well, we were fortunate. Forbes School of Business and Technology is online. So our students are joining in from across the United States, and we haven't changed much other than the fact that in our headquarters, the most employees are working from home. I miss traveling to California. I would travel to California a few times a year. I miss seeing our students at the graduation face to face. I miss interacting with our students and their family members. However, we haven't been impacted as much as some other schools that have campus presence. So in our particular case, doctoral residencies, for example, we move those online. We can't do them face to face and stuff along those lines. I feel we were fortunate, and I feel our adjustments were minor. We were able to push forward, serve our students, take care of business. We did, you know, of course, I think every single university, we had to be more flexible, more understanding. We had students who actually had COVID. We had faculty members who had COVID. Just, I think the theme is understanding, adaptation, flexibility, compassion, and that notion that we're in this together. So luckily for us, I don't think that our operations were impacted much in that regards.
Yeah, but as you are talking about this business and this technology and all, do you think the work you were doing, or your department, or the school was doing, some sort of way it was ahead or prepared?
Yes.
Kind of things.
Yes. So I firmly believe that we have one of the most advanced technologies in comparison to other universities. We have this thing that we say technology changes everything. So we were very well prepared. We have a cutting edge technology in our classrooms. Our connection with Force Media enables our students to actually have access to real-time interviews, articles. We also have blogs in our classes. So for example, if you're covering a particular topic, the students can check the Twitter, they can check the news feed. They're literally seeing a real-time news pertaining to the course concepts. Yes, not only we were better prepared, we were way ahead of many others. Yes. Yeah. So that's that was our blessing. And I think the adjustment came from the fact that many of our faculty members were doing research, traveling, doing lectures, conferences, and interacting that way in the past. So we started doing Zoom to the point where I feel we're doing it too much. But I think everyone's zoomed out right now. I think that's a new term. Everyone's zoomed out. But luckily, we're just, I will, we'll get tired, and we'll get to the point where I think that the entire global community is consistently saying, when is this going to be over? When can we push forward? And I guess patience, we're running out of patience, and, but it is what it is. We're in this together.
Yeah, those are the very, the unique point which you bring, like the way how the students and how the your school particularly dealing with current scenario, and even though they are on their path of learning and performing. But do you think as you are in business school and technology, do you think it is going to get some way again the backward or way forward?
Well, I think there's so many articles, and so many folks are now trying to speculate on that. I don't think as a human race, I don't think we'll ever go backwards. We're going to go forward. So this changed the work. This changed the work setting tremendously. I think that many companies realize they can have the vast majority of their workforce working remotely. I also think that working remotely is not for everyone. So I think that people should have an option, those people that want to go back into the workforce. I was actually at the conference, Women in Technology, just the other day, and we were discussing actually one alarming trend. Even in the Western world, in the United States in particular, women have been impacted the most in the workforce as a result of COVID. Women are leaving the workforce. Well, women are leaving the workforce at the rapid numbers. There are two reasons. You still have a gap in pay when it comes to gender. So if you have a spouse, if you have a couple, or husband and wife, or a couple in the same household, chances are she's making less than he is. So if they're picking and choosing who's going to watch the kids, well, she will be the one to leave because of the pay gap. And then she'll be the one to leave because we're still primarily caregivers. No matter the accomplishment, women are still the primary caregivers. This is where I consider that trend quite alarming, and many people are talking about it right now. So it does appear that women were impacted the most. And then we're reading a lot of global articles about the instances of domestic violence, child abuse. Sometimes, sadly, women had, in a domestic abuse situations, they had a way out going to work. And now that was working from home. Now they're with their abusers 24/7 in extreme circumstances. So there are a lot of issues that I feel absolutely everyone's impacted, but I do feel that women are now impacted even more so because they're carrying the household still, taking care of the kids as they're doing their work, more so than men. And what's the solution? Well, the gender gap in pay, like that really has to stop worldwide. And then also coming up with the alternative solutions. If we're going to work remotely, once COVID is over, what other options we have for childcare, and what better options we have? Are those companies going to provide childcare or something along those lines?
Right. But like when you're here bringing this gender gap, gender pay gap, and it is reminding me when I was working on this issue and I was doing my research. But it is always there, and it is there. Still, it is there. But while this pandemic situation or this COVID situation bring it more in the everyone's presence of mind, because people never used to take, even we had a lot of publication, a lot of people were working on it, and we have published a lot of book and work, but it was never people were never taking it so consciously about this issue. But when you're talking about women especially impacted and this technology and all of this issue because of this COVID and gender pay gap, do you think the government is going to work on these issues now more seriously, or still we have the same way, the same journey like the other previously, or the in other ways? Because I remember I was doing on this, but people used to feel like it's okay. They never used to feel like it is important to talk about, it is important to work on this issue. Like
Well,
household work is not, I was working unpaid household work and gender pay gap, so I was bringing those issues. And when you are talking about this domestic violence, gender pay gap, and this COVID, how about, do you think in coming way or coming time the government is thinking of?
well, you know why I smiled? I smiled because we all have unpaid housework. No
Yeah.
one's paying me for what I'm doing at the house.
No, that is true. But like same time, why it is important now? Because as you said, they have to work with this abuser. But whereas if there is something there is in mind, and there is some kind of work on that, like okay, this is equally to having paid work, can make maybe the situation better, and can make them consciously understand how much important as this job as well.
Well, the thing is that those are several different issues. The reason being is every single country is slightly different, and the gender gap is different in different areas of the
Yes.
world.
Yeah.
I would say now, based on my interaction with so many women worldwide, I think that we are now all aware. So this concept that we're not aware, I think the awareness piece has been taken care of. Everyone is aware.
Yeah.
Now the issue is what we do about it, and every single country is going to handle it differently. Raising awareness, working with different corporations, because it's not the government issue. The government can pass certain legislation, but ultimately it's up to a private sector.
Yeah.
But when it comes to that, I think that will get better. I think generation of my daughter as a scenario, she's 14 years old. I do believe that by the time she enters the workforce, I would hope that that she will be absolutely paid equally for the job that she performs, that she's qualified to do as her male counterpart. Now, when it comes to the issue of childcare, if the companies decide, oh, what a grand idea, let's have 80% of our work working remotely, even after COVID ends, fine. But what are you doing for childcare for those individuals? Are you contributing to their childcare costs? There are certain companies that can actually run their own childcare centers, depending upon liability, that may not be. But what are you doing to accommodate? Because now you're having these employees. Do they have the proper technology? Do they have what they need? I still have some friends that are saying they're working halfway through their workload because their equipment is not where it needs to be. So the companies cannot just do that to cut the cost. They need to invest. When it comes to domestic violence, child abuse, this is an ongoing issue from the origins of mankind. Therefore, we would be so naive to say now that we're more aware. We have prevention programs, we have counseling, we have different groups that are helping, we have peer support, networking. With that said, I am not naive enough to say that that will stop permanently across the world. It is an ongoing issue. How to solve that issue? A lot of times it's connected to poverty. It's connected to economic conditions. A lot of times it's connected to addiction. So those are the things that can be done as a prevention mechanisms. And then also recognizing the signs, reaching out. And those of us who ever had a friend or loved one in those type of situations, they can appreciate how difficult it is, even while recognizing the signs. Trying to rescue the abused party, or to help them, or to be supportive, because a lot of times we don't want to get involved. I am not an expert in that area. I haven't done any research in that area, but I know this just as an observer, as a human being living in this world and seeing things. But I know that there's a statistics about children that are not eating well. now because many children here in the United States, there was a percentage of children that were eating their meals at school. So when the schools closed, they were trying to figure out, can these children still pick up their meals even though the schools are closed? Now the schools are reopening, so that issue is being taken care of. I was actually ashamed. I was ashamed that I didn't realize how many children rely on that program. I felt that, you know, it's as if I live a life of privilege, and I was not aware, painfully aware, that maybe some of my daughter's schoolmates were relying on school meals in order to be able to eat. So COVID reopened some wounds and exposed some things that prior to COVID, maybe those things were better hidden. They were still there and they were still painful.
Yeah, that is really painful, and it is always like make me feel like we were making ourselves unaware. Maybe we were trying to hide from that fact. It was there, but this pandemic bring it more in our conscious, in more in highlight, and in more in the sense that it is also needed to work on this issue. It is required to look forward to how we can work on this issue to create better society. And when we are talking about this all sort of thing, so what was the most strong output or points about your, this global women work and research and all?
Well, my research was actually, my involvement with the women organizations comes from the fact that I'm a board member, Center for Women Leadership at the Forbes School of Business and Technology. And what we do is actually, we're having a series of events with prominent women speakers. We're also doing research ventures. We have a very robust mentorship program, teaming up successful women leaders with our students, our alumni. And however, my research was mainly focused on research in the field of leadership and studying enterprises in the developing countries that are thriving despite all the odds, all the obstacle variables, as I call them. So for example, in Haiti, we spent quite a bit of time there, and we actually studied 2 enterprises that are doing incredibly well, that are incredibly thriving. And I think we all know all the issues that Haiti has faced as far as the political turmoil, as far as a very heavy bureaucracy, not to even mention the earthquake, devastating earthquake, then the hurricane. So these businesses are thriving. I've seen the same in Cuba. I've seen the same in Mexico. I've seen the same in other parts of the world. So I was mainly focusing on studying thriving enterprises, trying to pinpoint what makes them successful. What are the things that motivates these business owners to be successful despite everything else going against them? I think COVID is going to be a great case study after the world reopens, what some of those enterprises did in lieu of COVID. So I do plan to circle back to some of those areas and do another case study. So that is my research, leadership, and that those are the different research ventures I've done. I've done research in conflict negotiation. Right now, I'm doing research pertaining to women's studies. That one has not been published as of yet, as a result of my involvement as a board member of the CWL.
But when you're talking about this female leadership, do you think that in current world, we need more female leaders?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, absolutely. We need more opportunities for women. We should not be placing anyone in any sort of position based on the fact that, we just have to have more opportunities where women can compete based on their qualifications, based on their skills. We need more support, more mentors for women. We need more role models for women. Recently, I was on a panel, Women in Technology, and what's happening is women need to see more women in the places of power within the technological industry. I was also talking on the panel, talking about the STEM education. Girls are doing better or equal to boys in middle school up to a high school level. Something happens that by the time they start graduating high school, they're going into college, and they're no longer going as heavily into the STEM fields or doing as well as men in STEM fields. Something happens during that very fragile period between the high school to college transition. So we were trying to pinpoint some of the factors. Yet again, the lack of role modeling, the lack of seeing women in those positions, the lack of support, maybe that notion, the society's notion, well, you should go into this field versus that field. I mean, we're all guilty of that. You know, I bought different toys when it comes to my son versus my daughter. So we're actually almost giving them from an early age. We're putting different roles as far as, you know, teaching our son to be strong and to be tough, and teaching our daughter to, you know, to be gentle. And, you know, so those are all the things. Yes, we need more women leaders. And you know what, one of the things that is interesting, I mean, that's no secret, it was all over the news. I don't want to go into politics, but they were saying that countries that have female leadership, they've done quite a bit better when it comes to COVID.
For example, I was reading that article actually.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about the New Zealand Prime Minister, you know, Germany at the offset of COVID did quite well, you know, the Chancellor and all that good stuff. You know, right now they're struggling.
And all of that, yeah,
they're struggling again. But there is a place and time for male leadership, place and time for female leadership. Those two leadership styles are complementing each other. They're not, you know, out competing each other. So yeah, but we need qualified women leaders. I'm a firm believer you should not be placing anyone in any sort of position based on, you know, one being a female. Is that female qualified?
Yeah.
Is she the best candidate? But enabling her to being able to apply, and not having this notion where there's still cases where I know that seeing 3 resumes, if one is a woman, she may not get a phone call because the hiring manager happens to be a man looking for the male leader. It's a mindset. But also going back to my original story, we need male support. Behind, you know, the whole behind every strong man stands a woman. I also think behind every strong woman stands a man. We need those grandfathers, fathers, brothers, cousins to help the women in their lives, because we are. I always say, you know, it was due to my grandfather, due to my father, constant inspiration, constant. My father was actually very competitive, and he still is. And he's always like, well, can you do better? Can you do better? Well, I did the best I can. Well, can you do better? And I was like, and he's in sports, so he has that sports trait. And you know, he's a national head coach of the Bosnian judo team. So he's always like, can you do it better? You know, if you're number 3 in something, well, why aren't you number 1? And you know, inspiring me to strive. So men in our lives have a crucial role to play.
Definitely. Role. Yeah. It's definitely, it is creating more balance and equal society. But when you're talking about this, you know, system and creating this equal society and having support system, it is reminding me your book, The Power of Perception. What is all about? Tell us a bit more about that book, which is very famous and published.
Dr. Diane Hamilton and I, and Dr. Diane Hamilton is a nationally syndicated radio host show. She has a show here. She's also a behavioral expert and one of the Thinkers 50. Thinkers 50 is the equivalent of Academy Awards in the world of business. So Diane and I, we were talking about this concept that in the world of business, perception matters quite a bit, and perception can make it or break it when it comes to business effectiveness and employee motivation. And we just started chatting one day, what impacts our perceptions? Realizing that both of us are so vastly different, and we were in a situation where we were in the same meeting, or we were the recipient of the same message, and both of us got a completely different message. So we started studying the variables impacting perception. Those are, you know, experience, gender, your intelligence, your emotional intelligence, your level of curiosity, your culture, your spirituality. So all of those things impact perception quite a bit. And we came up with not only a book, but also an index that we're doing different trainings with different companies. How can they assess the perception of their employees and also make it better in sense of making it more aligned with the business reality? More aligned, because is there such a thing as a business reality? You know, but there is that fluid, ever fluid concept of business reality. So we did quite a bit of research in the field of perception, and perception impacts everything. Perception of women leaders. Women leaders are perceived to be aggressive if they are strong. The same behavioral pattern of a male leader, he may be deemed as very strong, very efficient. If a woman leader does the same thing that he does, all of a sudden she's aggressive. So it's all about perception. We discovered quite a bit of differences between men and women and the way they perceive reality. We have actually different stories in a book. One of the stories that was kind of funny, you have a woman looking at the painting, and the woman is saying, "Oh, wow, look at this painting. The sun is hitting the barn and the old man is so serene and he's so relaxed, and the color of the sun on the grass." And the man is looking at the same painting saying, "That barn needs to be repainted. It looks really old." Now that's simplifying it. Talking about women being more intuitive and more empathetic and more compassionate versus men being more practical. That's simplifying it. But there are differences, the way we perceive things. Women tend to be more hesitant to ask. They're more hesitant to ask questions, follow-up questions. Women tend to accept work without asking to be paid. In the same role, an employee who happens to be male would say, "Well, this is something extra that I'm being asked to do. Will I be compensated?" Women tend to negotiate far less than men, and that's a research. When it comes to salaries, women tend to accept the salary as offered to them. Men are more inclined to negotiate, and by negotiating, they're increasing that gender pay gap. So it's also something that we can do. You ask, what can we do better? Well, we can negotiate. I am guilty of, in the past, accepting salaries, being happy with it. Okay, you can be happy with it, but you can still negotiate. Ask for a little bit more. I was afraid if I asked for a little bit more, I would be denied that opportunity. That's not how it works in a business world. The recruiting manager may even expect you to negotiate. So, those are the things. So we did a lot of things on perception, and it's a fascinating concept. We constantly are sometimes in charge, sometimes not in charge of our perception. You and I are interacting today. We have certain perception of each other. Your audience members will form their perceptions. Our culture impacts our perceptions quite a bit. Diane and I have discovered that a lot of differences that the two of us have was based on our life experiences and our different cultures. So there's that as well.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, because I remember many times I talk with something and I say, "Oh, I don't know what you are thinking of. Maybe it's your perception, but I'm not judging about that." So definitely I agree, because a lot of time our culture, our own mindset, our own thinking, as well as you mentioned, like the way maybe you and me or our all audiences. But that's beautiful share. That's a beautiful share to talk about how the negotiation skill and how the women have what kind of tendency. But when we are talking all about it, what do you have something inspiring or maybe some kind of story to share with all of us?
Are you talking about a perception, or are you talking about something else?
Yes, yeah, in perception, yeah.
Well, I think that when it comes to perception, we were talking about different stories, and one of the stories that we shared was two tadpoles that were in a pond, and they were swimming in the pond, and one of them jumps out of the pond and disappears and turns into a frog. And then the frog is coming back, and the tadpole said, "Where did you go?" And the frog said, "Well, I went where it's dry." And the tadpole said, "Well, what is dry?" And the frog said, "Where dry is where there's no water." And the tadpole said, "Well, what's water?" Water is everywhere around you. You are in the water. So the point of this story is, we're sometimes in the midst of our own feelings, our own experiences, our own situation. We don't see that water around us at all. So we're not able to really form proper, efficient, our perception mechanisms are not working properly, because you know how you talk to a friend, and a lot of times you share some problems in your life, and your friend can solve it, but you're not able to. Why? Because they're looking from the outside. And also the other story that we have in a book is the Plato's allegory of the cave, which is a famous famous story with prisoners being chained to the walls of the cave, and their entire life, all they're seeing is shadows on the walls of the cave because they have puppeteers behind them. To them, those shadows are reality. So is our reality the shadows that our mind created, or is our reality aligned with what the true reality is? We all get horribly offended or upset, or, because we perceive something that maybe the other person did not intend. So we talk about suspending our beliefs. That is not giving up our faith. That is not giving up our beliefs. It's suspending it as we're observing others, as we're letting them explain what they're trying to do, especially in a cross-cultural communication and global business. That is so incredibly important, because if you're perceiving everyone from the standpoint of where you stand within the midst of that water that we were talking about, then you're never seeing the dry land. You're never seeing the different reality. So that's those are the two stories that I had.
Yeah, no, but that's really a beautiful, interesting story, but same time bringing a lot of aspects and can be applied in not only in business world. I feel like it can be applied in all the aspects, whether it is politics, whether it is our own life or business or everywhere. Because when you were sharing, I said it happens in many times in, when we are talking about internationally in politics level and all the level.
Oh yes. Personal life as well. I mean, a lot of times, you have an argument with your loved one because you thought they said something or they meant something, or they moved their body the wrong way and the facial expression or something, and then it turns out, that was, you came to the table with some notion that was off.
Or your perception. Yeah, exactly. So thank you. Thanks a lot, Maya, Professor Maya, for sharing this all. This is so inspiring and a lot of experience, and I feel like I keep listening to you, but we have a bit of time constraint. But what are your future plans for your work or research? How we can see that?
Well, I would like, as soon as the world truly reopens, I would like to go back and I would like to circle back to some of the countries I've done research in before, just to see the impact of COVID and how they adapted, how those enterprises adapted to the COVID situation. I'm in touch with many of my friends globally and across the world. I hope we're gonna go back to the concept of global lectures in person, also do some conferences. Zoom is wonderful. I've done a lot of things through Zoom, done a lot of things through webinars, but I really think that we are all hungry for that special moment when we actually see people face to face, have dinner, chat, interact, have networking sessions. So those are my future plans, but we're not necessarily in control, so we can do whatever we can right now from homes, but hopefully very soon. One of my plans is to go somewhere. One of my plans is to travel. It doesn't have to be for work. I would like to go back and visit my family for sure. So I do have, that is probably my immediate plan, is once I'm able to travel, is I want to go back to Sarajevo and I want to visit my parents.
Yeah, it's I think it's been for everyone the same situation. For me, having almost, it's been now 2 years, I haven't met with my family, and still we are thinking, let's hope when it's get over and we can see our family. Once again, thanks a lot. But before finishing, last not least, what one message would you like to give to our audience and viewers who are listening you, maybe from your own experience, from your own life, or from your own wisdom?
I would say find your passion. And I know it sounds very simplistic, but don't be afraid to change different jobs. Don't be afraid to switch from one career path to another. Challenge yourself every single day, learn something new, and try to make a difference. Try to make a difference through your passion, make a difference. Don't think a completely big picture. You don't necessarily have to save the world, but try to do a little bit towards making this world a better place, and give back to those that need it the most, and try to support another lady, another young girl. Try to inspire one woman in order for her to find her own path towards leadership and her success.
That's beautiful. Thank you. And thanks a lot. That find your passion. Don't stop yourself. That's a great learning and great message. I really love that. And I feel like I also need to apply on myself. Once again, thank you. Thanks a lot. Professor Maya, it was great pleasure to be with you today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
And thanks to all viewers. If you would like to hear more women voice and part of Women Dialogues, please connect with us. And if you would like to see Professor Maya's work, her details are in the description below as well. And see you in next episode. Thank you. Bye-bye.